the scale matters. And when it comes to Russia and Ukraine, look, I'm not here to say that Ukraine has been perfect, that Ukraine is this perfect country. I am saying that when you look at the scale, we're talking about a glass of water versus a flood that is Russia's war crimes in Bucha, right? Russia's war crimes in the occupied territories that it does, Russia's war crimes in Chechnya, Russia's war crimes in almost every conflict it's been involved in, massively outscale anything you could say Ukraine has done. And
so what happens if right now we just stopped Ukraine and said, no more funding, we're done, we're out? What would happen?
So first of all, that sends a signal to nuclear proliferation expands. Japan starts to want to get nukes. You have all these other smaller countries that say, you know what, we need nukes now because we can no longer rely on the global world order to protect us, which has been protecting us before. So now we need nukes for ourselves so we can be a sovereign nation and not worry about a greater power coming in and taking us out. So that's the first thing that happens. The second thing that happens is China takes Taiwan. It shuts down trade in the Bering Strait, I'm sorry, not the Bering Strait, my bad, the Taiwan Strait, right? Where about $2 trillion a year of commerce goes through. And it just shuts that down because it can. And you have land grabs by smaller countries, each trying to take pieces of each other, because Ukraine is really a domino, and once it falls, it's going to lead to this cascade.
For clarification, you're saying that the structure of the liberal economic order right now relies on us staying in Ukraine. Is that
yes?
Okay.
Yes, in a very real way, and again, Taiwan is looking at us. We have our NATO allies looking at us. We have other countries looking at us. We have our enemies looking at us. How are we going to respond? Are we actually going to stand up for the values that we say that we hold? When we say we will support Ukraine no matter what, do we actually follow through on that? And they're looking to see if they can trust us to keep our word.
The new government,
and if we do
our new government has not said that we're going to support Ukraine no matter what, and that would be a wild standard to have. I'm curious why you support Taiwan, because if you have this standard, well, we can't get involved, even if the population there really wants to leave and perhaps has justification to leave and be a separate country, we shouldn't get involved. Why is the U.S. arming Taiwan? Why are we involved in Taiwan? Shouldn't we just kind of say, well, we can just, let them be part of China?
We set a red line in Taiwan that if China decides to take over using military force, we will stop them. Because we recognize that there are fundamental, specific interests that are good for America that run through Taiwan. First of all, we get a bunch of chips from them, which we put in.
I understand. I'm not. What I'm asking.
There's a lot of trade that went through the Taiwan
I'm going towards the principle that you elucidated earlier when you were saying that there's this principle of national sovereignty and that countries shouldn't be interfered with by outside powers, even if certain sections of that country want to be independent. Now, it's clear that Crimeans wanted to be independent. They wanted to be separate, and their constitution. And their contract was the rest of Ukraine was violated when the Constitution was thrown away in 2014. So why are you okay with the U.S. intervening in Taiwan, this also kind of breakaway area, but you're not okay with the Crimean people wanting to leave Ukraine?
Because again, just like I would be okay if instead of if Taiwan wanted to hold a referendum now, right, today, right, with the situation it has now, they aren't under occupation right now, at least not in any real way. They could hold that vote, and they have several times to do we want closer relations with the mainland of China and things like that. And you have fights politically where they elect leaders that go closer to China, go away from China, things like that. If they were to say, you know what, we just want to rejoin the motherland and we are done being our own separate thing, and there was no or not enough coercive force, then we should probably let that happen. But if China came in and does what they want to do, which is send boats, missiles, and troops to occupy the nation and force the issue, then yes, I think we absolutely should stop them.
I feel like you ignored something that I brought up earlier.
Because that's what Russia did.
Sure. No. I feel like you're ignoring something that I said earlier. In 1992, Crimea declared independence from Ukraine, and they were going to hold a referendum to have a vote. The central government in Kiev said, no, you don't get to have that vote. You have 1 week to withdraw the referendum with the threat of force. So when you keep saying, well, the Crimeans should have been allowed to vote without Russian interference, I agree. The Ukrainian government wouldn't let them. And they also wouldn't let them in 2014. And so that's why the Russians intervened in Crimea, for also some political, obviously geopolitical reasons as well. But the people of Crimea,
That is
you keep saying,
nonsense.
let me ask you, in 1992, do you deny the truth that in 1992 Crimea declared independence and Kiev said no?
I don't deny.
So when you keep saying, well, the Crimeans should have had a vote themselves, and you have Kiev not letting them have the vote, I'm confused as to your actual standard here. Why do you support Taiwan?
Do you think that the United States should have allowed, during the Civil War, the South to secede?
No, because they didn't have their constitutional rights violated.
What
if they
constitutional
did-
rights in 92 were violated from Crimea?
Hold on. So the Soviet Union collapsed. We're talking between 1990 and 1992. There was a first referendum in 1991 in which the Crimean people overwhelmingly voted for autonomy. There was a second referendum in 1991 or the Crimeans and really the rest of Ukraine voted to leave the Soviet Union. And then literally within a year of the Ukrainians having a referendum to leave the Soviet Union, right, which was arguably legal at the time, probably illegal, you had the Crimeans say, well, we're going to have a referendum to leave Ukraine. And the Ukrainians said no. So the Ukrainian people, when they wanted to have a vote, it was denied to them. And then in 2014, when they wanted to have a vote, it was denied to them as well. The OSCE refused to come in and monitor that election in Crimea, despite the fact that the Crimeans invited the OSCE to come in and monitor the election.
Angels.
Well, hold on. The fact that you keep saying, "Oh, they're not angels, they're not angels." I understand.
Sure.
I'm saying they're.
None of this
I'm
justifies-
saying
let's
they're.
get back to the
I'm
point.
no.
None of this
We're on the
justifies
point.
Russia
We're on the
aggression.
no. You keep saying, "Let's get back to the point." But this is the thing.
It is not. It's
This is the
obfuscation.
thing that justifies intervention.
Obfuscation.
This is the thing that justifies intervention.
not.
When you have an area that is denied a Declaration of Independence, denied the right to have a referendum, and then when they vote for a president, fine, we're under your constitutional rule. That constitution is broken, and the president that they elected gets thrown out unconstitutionally. And now they're like, well, we want to leave. And then Ukraine says no, and the OSCE says we're not going to monitor it because Kiev didn't authorize this referendum. And then you say, oh, but then the Russians come in. Nothing justifies this. Let me ask you, like, at what point would Russian, like, it seems like your standard is they'll never be justified.
Wow.
So
In March of 95, Ukrainian parliament abolished the Crimean constitution.
Yep.
All laws and decrees contradicting those of Kiev, disarmed the bodyguards of the government. That's crazy.
They've been bullying Crimea.
Ukrainian National Guard troops entered the residence of the leader of Crimea, seized it, and forcefully took it over.
Yeah, look in 1992 as well.
Wow.
The whole story.
That was
here.
in 95. That was yeah, I believe that was 95.
That was in 95. There's this has been going on since 91. There's 91, 92, 95, 96.
When the Soviet Union fell, Crimea said, we're our own place. Kiev said, we won't let you do that.
Yep.
And so then over the next few years, Crimea had established its own forces and constitution, declared independence, and then Kiev invaded and took it over.
I'm not here to argue
Ukraine did.
whether or not Ukraine did correctly there. I'm here to argue that Russia did wrong when it forcefully invaded. Like, again, even in 95, if Russia had said, you know what, we're going to come in and we're going to take Crimea ourselves, that would have been wrong. That would have been not okay. That is something that we should oppose. We should not let large foreign powers intercede in conflicts that they themselves are stirring up. Remember?
No.
Because
Crimea, this is not the case. Hold on.
Yanukovych,
No.
again, there's been
You're about to,
a lot of
you're
evidence.
about to totally misquote the actual history on this once again.
Yeah.
When it comes to Crimea, okay, as Tim just pointed out, 1995, 1996, there was also a constitution that was passed in Kiev that changed
does not give Russia the right
Hold
to
on.
intervene.
You keep saying that.
Because it keeps remaining to be true.
Okay, but we all understand your point here. We all understand that you think.
I don't think you do.
No, I do. I'm disagreeing with it. I'm saying that when you bully an area to this extent, when they want to leave and you deny it, when you invade them and take away their constitution, when you violate the shared constitution that you force Crimea to be under to their detriment, the person that they voted for, what it seems to me is that if there's anything that justifies like this is way more justified than the U.S. leaving the U.K. at this point. Like if there's anything that justifies intervention, this is what justifies intervention.
Absolutely
and you
not.
keep saying, well, it's not justified. It's not justified. How convenient. This oppressed people that doesn't have the means to defend themselves, well, they can't appeal to any outside power to help save them from this consistent oppression because, well, we can't have intervention. We can't have any intervention. They just have to sit and take it. That's your position.
Okay,
the Crimeans
do
just
you
had to
think
sit and
that
take
is
it.
absolutely not true because there is
wouldn't let 'em leave.
There are a wealth of options, right?
Like what?
That we can get into. Like if we wanted to stop that from happening, there are sanctions. There are ways to.
Who would have sanctioned
influence
Ukraine?
it.
The U.S. would have
Again.
sanctioned Ukraine?
Again, if what you're saying is true, and I have to look it up, and when I look it up,
please
is it
do.
going to be true?
Please do.
I'm very curious.
Yes.
But we'll get into that, right? But in the 1995, right, if to the world order, Crimea had said, help us, and appealed for help to outside forces. Do you think that the only choices are military intervention or just letting them?
I think at that point, the only option was military intervention.
I disagree. I think that's
because
untrue.
the coup was pro-West. The West was not. We've already intervened on behalf of this power structure.
Russia can impose sanctions as well.
Yeah, what they're going to say is, we don't care. We're going to just trade with the EU now. We're going to trade with NATO now. We don't care. We're going to continue to oppress the Crimeans, and there's nothing you can do about it.
There are other options.
You keep saying there's other options, but first of all, there's not, and second of all, this standard you have where it's like there's always other options.
Not mean
the
that
standard you have where it's always other options whenever it's any kind of intervention that's not us doing it. But when we do it, it's complicated.
You think I'm okay with all of U.S. interventions? I've named
Assad
two.
was bad.
I've named two interventions by the U.S. that I've been totally against. One is the Iraq War, as well as the Vietnam War. Those are two U.S. interventions that I think we should not have done.
Yeah, and then we asked you about Libya and Syria, and
I didn't know
Libya,
enough
you
about
didn't know about Libya.
But Syria, I think, yes, stopping Assad was a good thing, and we should have done it, and I'd do it again.
Couldn't there be other options for stopping Assad?
There could have, but they
Couldn't
weren't
we sanction
working.
him?
Do you understand that we did sanction Assad? We went through the steps. To go from 0 to 100, right? To go from doing nothing to, okay, now we're coming in with tanks.
It wasn't
would be
nothing.
wrong.
This has been going on since 1991.
Step-by-step process.
No.
This escalation
This
of
has been
force
going
is a
on
thing.
since 1991. We brought up 1992, the Declaration of Independence that was ignored. We talked about 1995 when Kiev invaded Crimea and abolished their constitution. We're like, this has been going on for decades, right? At this point, and you're saying, well, there could have been other things. They've been trying other things. It's not like Russia just invaded this out of nowhere.
Thanks for watching this clip from the Culture War podcast. We're live every Friday, 10 a.m. to noon, so subscribe and come hang out.